You're listening to a Gustavus Afternoon. Scott Burton, your host today on Thursday, May 31st, 2018. It's 58 degrees here in Gustavus, mostly sunny, absolutely beautiful. We're down here at the Fireweed Gallery Coffee and Tea House at Four Corners. And my first guests today are Lee and Linda Parker. They own Frontier Freight here in Gustavus. And they also are involved with the Gustavus Historical Archives and Antiquities. Welcome to the show, Lee and Linda.
Thank you.
It's so nice to have you here.
Thanks, Scott.
So for our listeners, let's say in Juneau, what is the significance of Four Corners right here? Where are we?
Well, this is the only Four Corners that exist in Gustavus. That's why it's called Four Corners. The significance beyond that is probably the city center, if there is such a thing in Gustavus. This is as close as you can get to a city center, and that's where all the activity occurs. And where we're sitting right now is a building that my son owns. So beyond that, I mentioned, we could go back and say in the original Gustavus, this was part of one of the homesteads of the Parker family too.
And that's your family. I understand they were some of the first settlers here in the early part of the 20th century.
Right. They came in 1917. My grandfather was actually drawn to Alaska during the 1898 gold rush. He was up on the Chilkoot Trail, then on after that went to Atlin. Brought his family down here after he discovered Gustavus. Looked like a great place for farming. So he was one of the original settlers, and he was really the only settler that stayed. So there's a lot of Parkers here today.
Okay. Linda, what keeps you busy here in town?
Projects, always projects. Right now we're working on developing a museum. We have a building and some land, and right now we're in the process of painting, and then next will be preparation for the exhibits. Our problem is we have more than what will fit in the building, so it'll be a lot of editing, and it'll be a good start for keeping the artifacts and documents and things like that for the next generations.
So I understand you started the Gustavus Historical Archives and Antiquities back in the early 2000s.
Right.
And
Right.
what inspired you to do that then?
Well, being in the Parker family, we have literally thousands of original photographs and documents and letters and information, as well as other homesteaders' descendants have given us theirs, and what to do with it all. And there seemed to be a lot of interest around the country and even around the world in this little place here. And so we decided to put it on the website, and we have only a small fraction of what we have on the website of photographs, documents, and things like that for research purposes.
Thinking of all these pictures and artifacts that you have, is there one that comes to mind that you can describe for our listeners that interests you?
The one with the Parker brothers with the flag.
Well, there's so many, it's hard to choose just one. But let me say about the website, for instance. We have a plane crash here that happened in the 1950s, a National Guard plane crash. And being the Parker family were involved in the rescue mission when that crashed and actually heard the plane crash, the plane is still here in the forest. And so we put pictures of it and the story of the plane crash on the website. Descendants of the captain and co-captain who died were just one day typing and Googling their father's name and had no idea the plane was still in the woods. And almost all the descendants of the deceased in the plane crash have now come to visit us, visit the site, and it has been very meaningful for them. That just comes to mind because that's kind of the impact, when you have something on the web, people can find you, and it's been a wonderful thing for those families.
And earlier you mentioned that there's international interest in Gustavus. What would you attribute that to?
I don't know. Partly, I suppose, because we have the national park here, but partly because we have a lot of characters, and the ibex out in Lemmershire Island have quite a presence in historical kind of writings and books and things. And so people that are doing research, wanting to do papers or books and that kind of thing, call us from all over, asking us what we have, and so far we've had to scurry around and pull things out of closets and from everywhere that they're located, and now with the museum we will have a research center where all those documents can be actually accessed by people who come.
Speaking of character, Lee, I hear there may have been a few characters in your family. Tell us about a few of them.
I think Uncle Pearl would be one, and Uncle Glenn. Everybody calls them Uncle. So
Now, you didn't tell me you were going to ask me this question. We have a lot of characters in the Parkers. They were an interesting group of people. I'm glad I was able to grow up with these Parkers. They all told great stories, and they were fascinating people. And they came up to Alaska to be in the gold rush, and that was a fascinating time. My grandfather was, like I said, was involved in gold mining up in Canada for a number of years before he got chased out of there. So you mentioned Uncle Pearl. He was a person who never grew up. I remember him when he was in his 80s. He still ran around with tennis shoes on and jumping up and down, telling stories about riding Harley Davidsons, which he's just an amazing guy. But we have a lot of that history that we're trying to capture here. Uncle Pearl had a cabin that he had built out of driftwood, and he lived in that cabin, and we have preserved it. It's now undercover at the museum site. So these guys, we're going to make sure they live on.
Okay. Let's fast forward a little bit to now, and thinking of Frontier Freight. It's a company you two operate. What does that do for this community?
Well, it's changed the life of the community, really. I think most people here would tell you that they really appreciate the fact that they can bring stuff into Gustavus now easy in a timely fashion for a reasonable price. Sounds like an advertisement, but the fact is we have always had difficulty living in a remote community and being able to have access to goods from the outside. So we bring freight in here now several times a week on the ferry, and it's a good service. And I set the service up primarily to help my son out because he started a store here, I don't know how many years ago, and he needed somehow to get the goods out here, so that's why we started it. But now everyone else.
So that store consists of groceries and lumber and hardware, and Frontier Freight also brings most of the goods for the fishing lodges and for Glacier Bay National Park, the lodge that's there, the groceries for other people that come. So
I was going to ask you, what are some of the most popular things that you bring over?
Groceries.
fresh produce.
What are some of the challenges of getting freight to Gustavus, Alaska?
Well,
Where do you start?
yeah,
You know, we're kind of dependent on the ferry.
we
and
are
we
so
have,
dependent on the ferry.
And we have, so if a ferry breaks down and we're loaded with, thousands of dollars of produce and groceries, and now it can't get here.
So what do you do
And
with
so
it?
that has happened to us a number of times, or the weather doesn't cooperate and the ferry gets out here but can't dock and has to turn around and leave with all the frozen things thawing. That's just the beginning of some of the troubles.
And right now the ferry's running so full because it's become a very popular thing that we have a difficult time finding space on the ferry. So I've had backlogs of up to 12 semi-trailers trying to get them out here at times because we just can't get space on the ferry.
What's the fix for you two?
More ferries.
More ferries, more frequent ferries, and
We've
more
been asking for that.
designated, runs, things
Yeah.
like that.
Wow. Let's go back to the museum for a second. I understand you are putting together a physical space. What's that going to look like?
Well, it's a 30 by 30 foot open building. Not open, but a large room building where we will have exhibits of a lot of the artifacts from clear back dating to 1914. We will be representing most of the homesteaders by having some of their items and things. It was a different way of life. There was no electricity here. People got very inventive and so we're just going to be demonstrating, it's kind of like a living museum, what their life was like back then and with a lot of the original artifacts.
Okay, and where can people find the online museum right now?
Well, the online website is www.gustavushistory.org. And there are artifacts, some pictures of artifacts and things like that, many documents and many photographs. The museum itself, the physical museum here in Gustavus, we will be working all summer to bring that together, and then there will be a grand opening. That grand opening may well not happen till the first of next year.
Do you need any resources for that, volunteers, anything like that?
Everybody will be hearing about it.
We have volunteers now. They've been great. We really appreciate the volunteers who have already been participating with us.
Yeah.
Well, it has been really great talking to you. I appreciate you coming on a Gustavus Afternoon here with KTOO Public Media. We've been speaking with Lee and Linda Parker, the owners of Frontier Freight, and also they are organizing the Gustavus Historical Archives and Antiquities in the upcoming museum. Thank you so much for coming on the show, you two. Is there anything we're missing, anything you'd like to add about life in Gustavus?
Life in Gustavus triples in the summertime, so come on out on a ferry and visit us.
Great. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Scott.
It's called My Father's Grave. I wrote this for my dad. My father was born in the hills of West Virginia. Rode the coal cars to the train yards, went to work at 17. He married Mama late in life. They gave birth to 5 children. You know hard times was all they'd ever seen. That old car he drove made him ashamed, but to us it was a limousine. Took the kids out a riding right after Sunday school. Buy watermelon and stop somewhere to eat it in those picnic chairs. Spit the seeds out at each other, spit the seeds up in the air. We did not know that we was poor. To us kids it did not matter, but to him it broke his heart, cracked in pieces as it shattered. Catch the lightning bugs in mason jars as it got dark in our backyard. In a house that we grew up in that our father never owned. Late at night the wind would blow and rattle on the window. In this rundown house he paid the rent for 40 some odd years. And though he worked hard all his life and he never drank or gambled, and he never owned that home that he dreamed through silver tears. We did not know that we was poor. To us kids it did not matter, but to him it broke his heart, cracked in pieces as it shattered. Catch the lightning bugs in mason jars as it got dark in our backyard. In a house that we grew up in that our father never owned. When the old man died, he didn't have a nickel to his name. All the kids pitched in to pay for his funeral. Mama's sister donated a little plot of land to lay his body down to rest in peaceful sleep. And it was 6 feet deep and 4 feet wide, and we covered it with flowers and thanked our father there for all he'd done. And at last he had a piece of land that he could call his own, and no one to collect the rent.
Support for today's broadcast comes from Glacier Bay Cottage, located down a private trail at the Four Corners in Gustavus, and featuring a kitchen, full bath, washer and dryer, bikes, both upstairs and downstairs beds, and donkeys. Details with longtime local hosts Kate and Fritz at glacierbaycottage.com.
And from the historic Gustavus Inn at Glacier Bay, now for sale. Located 1 mile from the airport on more than 5 acres. The property includes the main inn, several outbuildings, a greenhouse, and 2 organic gardens. Information at gustavusinn.com.
All right, and you are listening here to Gustavus Afternoon on Thursday, May 31st, 2018. Scott Burton, your host. Is absolutely beautiful here in Gustavus. My next guest on the show is Kelly McLaughlin. She's the owner of the Fireweed Gallery Coffee and Tea House. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for having us here in your beautiful space. Tell us a little bit about what you do here.
So it's an art gallery. It's been around since '91, called the Fireweed Gallery. Bill Loker started it. Denise and Jim Healy bought it from him, and I bought it from them 9 years ago. Added the coffee shop on that fall, and it's just been growing leaps and bounds since then. So we offer food and coffee and art and clothes and books and a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I think our listeners will have heard in the background the espresso being made.
Yep, the grinder's unmistakable.
Tell us about a little bit of the art I see around us here.
So I focus on local art however much I can. We've got a lot of local artists here, and a lot of them represent themselves. Carol Baker has her own little studio, but I have some of her art over in this corner. I have Emily Mount, who's a local at the park where you guys are headed next, and she's got some photographs and some silk artworks. I have jewelry from Juneau to Skagway. I've got shirts from Homer to Anchorage, rugs from Mexico. It's a friend of Janine Driscoll who lives here, has a friend in Mexico, and she brought his rugs up, so I sell those. Just a little bit from wherever we can get it.
All right. Are you able to stay open year-round?
We are open year-round, yep.
And
7 days a week, year-round.
And what are the challenges of doing that?
Staffing. That's probably the biggest challenge, is keeping consistent staff when we need 3 times the staff in the summer, and then, just a few hours through the winter. But Gustavus sustains us pretty well.
And what's the most fulfilling part of running this for you?
Maybe providing the local jobs. I've been able to provide more and more, and that feels really good. I've got 4 teenagers that have worked for me for the last year, and they all just graduated high school this year. So it's really nice to be able to give back to the community like that.
Well, Kelly McLaughlin, thank you again for allowing us here to be in the Fireweed. This is an absolutely beautiful space. And,
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing it with us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Okay. And now our next guest is Rachel Parks. She is from the Gustavus Visitors Association. Let me know if I get this right. Rachel, past president and a longtime member and also owner of the Annie Mae Lodge.
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, it's nice to have you here, Rachel. Should we start with the Gustavus Visitors Association hat? I've been so curious here about how many people do you think visit Gustavus in the summer?
That is a really hard number to pin down, to tell you the truth. If you count just Gustavus, you're definitely talking about anywhere up to a couple hundred a day during the summer months minimum. The Alaska Airlines jet comes in. We have 2 small air carriers that bring people in throughout the day. And so we're moving a lot of people through our community and in and out of Glacier Bay as well.
And that's a good thing, right?
It's a great thing. I mean, as a business owner and somebody that has been working with other business owners for a really long time, the sustainability of small communities in Alaska is tricky. Gustavus has a little bit of an extra plus because of Glacier Bay, but you still have to get people to come and move in and out, and that's what you want. Yeah.
It was interesting. Linda Parker, who was on before, she talked about this, about Gustavus having a real international draw. Would you agree with that?
Most definitely. So again, having a national park, that's huge. Alaska on a whole is huge internationally. In fact, I just had guests at our lodge from India yesterday, and so we get people from all over the world. Alaska is much more than a national park. It's a worldwide park.
Thinking of those folks that are staying at the lodge, they're at the Annie Mae Lodge that you own and operate.
Yeah.
What are a few things that you tell them they must do while they're in Gustavus?
Well, there is a long list of musts that you have to do while you're here. I kind of break it into 2 different musts, things that you must do in Glacier Bay, whether it's in Bartlett Cove where there's the tribal house, or the rearticulated humpback whale called Snow, a naturalist program. can't be beat. But I also, for Gustavus and our small community, there's some musts here as well. The Nature Conservancy has a trail which is absolutely fabulous. It's called the Nagoonberry Trail. We have an amazing sandy beach, something that you don't find really anywhere else in Southeast Alaska. It's very rare to find a sandy beach, and we're really proud of that here. And then the last thing, which I think is actually the most important thing, is just checking out the community and the local businesses and the local people. It's a very friendly town. I always tell my guests, if you're out biking around or walking and you get lost, stop and ask someone. They really would like to tell you where to go. So, and in a good way. So the local feeling that Gustavus has, both community-wise and just visually, is unique.
I like that. So if, besides flagging somebody down and
Yeah.
asking for directions, where are other places that we can meet locals?
Yeah. So again, we're here at the Fireweed Gallery. This is one of my favorite places to stop in. Just as a local, but also as a visitor, you're going to find somebody to talk to and have a good conversation with. I love it. I know if I'm going to come in here that I am going to be talking to a good portion of my friends that I needed to talk to that day. The same with the Sunnyside Market or Toshco, which is our other store. There are places that you go, Alaska Seaplanes, where people are going in and out of. There are just places in town where we all are in and out of, whether you're guests or locals, and it's a very friendly community, and so all those places are hubs for getting the local flavor.
What might surprise our listeners about the people that live in Gustavus? I've noticed everybody waves at me no matter what.
So my parents moved here in 1973 when Gustavus was much, much smaller. And my mom always says the reason we all wave goes back to Rita Wilson. She was one of the friendliest people that anybody would know, but she always liked to know who her neighbors were, and she wanted to be friendly. And so she waved, and so we all wave, and I'm glad that we all have continued that. And in fact, people get in trouble if they don't wave, because you'll have your neighbor go up to you and be like, "Is something wrong? Are you upset with me? What happened?" Waving is really important. It's just another social intricacy that we do here. And it's what makes, I think, this community so tight, is things like that.
The Rita Wilson wave.
That's what I would love to call it, yes.
You're also owner of the Annie Mae Lodge. What are some of the things you enjoy about that business?
So the Annie Mae Lodge is actually my family. My mom and her two sisters started it. Annie Mae was my great-grandmother. And so when she passed away, they started it. And one of the things I love about the Annie Mae is meeting people from all over the world, and also locally, but passing on some of my family's history and the history in this area. So I count myself really lucky to live in Gustavus and Glacier Bay, and the fact that I get to share that with people is huge. And so that's probably my favorite thing.
So we just got through Memorial Day.
Yeah.
Okay, where are we now on the scale of visitors to Gustavus?
So we're entering crazy. So basically for Gustavus and for our local operations here in Glacier Bay, it's Memorial Day through Labor Day. The boat tour, the daily boat tour that goes into Glacier Bay, that most people get on just for the day, starts along and ends along those holidays. And so you just start to see a huge influx of people. Basically all the workers that are here for the summer are hitting the ground by Memorial Day, and so you're just entering what I call the crazy season.
So you'll be out of that in September.
That's the hope.
So the Gustavus Visitors Association, do you have a physical building here in town?
So actually, as of this summer, beginning of May, we do have a visitor information kiosk building down at the airport. And it is an unmanned station, but it is lights and it has heat and it has lots of information about cool things to do here in Gustavus, places to stay, things to do. And so that's new this year. So we're really excited about that. Other than that, we have a phone and a website where visitors contact us and get really valuable information about things to do here.
And should they Google Gustavus Visitors Association?
Yep, that works just fine. So GustavusAK.com is our website, and that's a great way to get started on finding things to do here.
And thinking about our Juneau listeners, what's the easiest way to get here?
Well, now that we have the ferry system, for a few years, the ferry makes it super easy for Gustavus and Juneau people to go back and forth. But I usually say that if you're coming from Juneau, or if you're sending friends and family from Juneau, bring them on the ferry one way, send them back by the plane the other, and that way they get the best of both experiences.
All right, we've been speaking with Rachel Parks, past president and longtime member of the Gustavus Visitors Association, also the owner of Annie Mae Lodge. Rachel, it's been great speaking with you. Thanks for coming on the show. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thanks so much for having me. I'm so glad that the Gustavus weather is as good as it is today. It really proves the fact that the weather is always nicer in Gustavus.
Thanks, Rachel.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stepping and on, go home. Stepping and on, go home. Stepping and on, go home. Stay with me till the morning. River's up and I can't get across. River's up and I can't get across. River's up and I can't get across. Stay with me till the morning. Stepping and on, go home. Stepping and on, go home. Stepping and on, go home. Stay with me till the morning. Well, I paid $5 an old blind horse, paid $5 an old blind horse, paid $5 an old blind horse. Stay with me till the morning. Stepping and on, go home. Stepping and on, go home. Stepping and on, go home. Stay with me till the morning. Well, I pushed and shoved and I couldn't get him in. I pushed and shoved and I couldn't get him in. I paid $5 for take him back again. Stay with me till the morning. Stepping and on, go home. Stepping and on, go home. Stepping and on, go home. Stay with me till the morning. Stepping and on, go home. Stepping and on, go home. Stepping and on, go home. Stay with me till the morning. Stepping and on, go home. Stepping and on, go home. Stepping and on, go home. Stay with me till the morning.
Support comes from Blue Heron B&B at Glacier Bay, centrally located near cafes and markets. Rooms with private bath, 2 kitchenette cottages, and sunroom breakfasts. Custom tours, shuttle service, and bike rental available. Information at blueheronbnb.net.
You're listening to a Gustavus Afternoon. As part of the show today, we are listening to music that's made here in Gustavus. You may recognize the first tune we played at the top of the show called My Father's Grave by Buddy Tabor. It was recorded in Gustavus in 2011 at the Home Shore Cafe, the late, great Buddy Tabor. And that's from a forthcoming live album to be released later in 2018 from Justin Smith and Rusty Recordings. And the song we just heard is called Stay Up All Night, Summertime at Strawberry Point, recorded by Tanya Lewis and Christopher Benke live at the Outpost. And Summertime, according to Justin Smith, is the all-time theme song of life in Gustavus. So that's fun. Speaking of the Outpost, we'll be there on Friday night, but we'll tell you more about that in a minute. Right now, my guest is Susan Brook. She is on the board of directors for the Gustavus Community Center, off and on in Gustavus since 1977. Susan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
It's so nice to have you here. So the Gustavus Community Center has been on the chalkboard for 10 years now?
That's right. Actually, the idea has been around since about 1965 when Sally Lesh had the idea. At the time, Gustavus had a population of about 25. And so in the intervening years, the community grew. We got a public library. The school expanded from primary to K through 12. But the idea for a community center has been around. Then in about 2008, we had a tragic death, and it reignited the discussion about the need for a community center. And so we started a dialogue with the rest of the community. We found there was a lot of community support for a community center, and we started fundraising. And within 2 years, we had enough money to buy land from the Lesh family for 8 acres. And we're continuing to fundraise to build a building.
Okay, and I understand this building is nicknamed Refuge from the Rain?
That's right. As we all know from this summer or this spring, that rain is one of the things we can count on here in Southeast Alaska. And we all know how much we appreciate a warm, dry space where we can join in with our fellow people. So we hope that having a building will help us expand our capacity to deliver programs and have more events and activities.
Okay, and so you hope to break ground in late 2018, this year, right?
Right. Yep. We have architectural drawings. We're at the engineers are looking over the drawings and doing their thing, and we hope to break ground sometime in late this year.
Okay, here we are at the Four Corners in the heart of Gustavus. Right. Where is it going to be from here?
From here, as the crow flies, it's about couple hundred yards, actually. It's right across from the Gustavus Inn, if you know where that is. It has a beautiful view of Icy Strait and Chichagof Island, and it's just a beautiful location. It used to be where the Lesh family had cows, and there's been sheep there, and it's full of wildflowers, and it's just a gorgeous location.
All right. Take our listeners on a virtual tour. Imagine we're walking in the front of the building. What's it look like? What's it like inside? And what's going to happen there?
Our phase 1 is going to be about 3,300 square feet. And there's going to be a main hall that's going to be capable of seating 200. And it'll be very configurable. So we'll have movable partitions so that we can have multiple activities going on. We'll have exercise equipment in there. We'll be able to have potlucks in there. Performances. We'll have a stage. And then there'll be a smaller space attached to it that will have space for a kitchen, sort of a lounge, hangout area, bathrooms. And there'll also be outside seating on a patio where you can take advantage of the south-facing exposure and enjoy the beautiful views.
Wow, that's excellent. What has been one of the challenges for you and your colleagues bringing this to fruition?
Well, part of it was our fundraising for the capital campaign was kicking in just as the economy in Alaska was tanking. So that was not helpful. But we persevered, we kept our focus, and now the economy is turning around, and So we're well on our way. We also got the Rasmussen grant in 2016, which was huge. And then the Juneau Community Foundation grant in 2017. So we're well on our way.
You mentioned that one of the things that could happen in this space is a potluck. I've heard that potlucking is very popular here in Gustavus.
That's one of our chief activities, I would say. Eating pie and having potlucks and listening to music is probably our favorite activity here. And so we're famous. Part of our mission statement is to preserve local traditions. And so we would like to use the community center as a place for the community to gather as a whole, because right now there's no space really big enough that can accommodate the whole community. There used to be, at Thanksgiving, there used to be community Thanksgivings, and we'd like to revive that tradition.
All right. Thinking about the fundraising for the community center, are you done, or do you still have more work to do?
Well, we like I said, we had the Juneau Community Foundation grant. It's a challenge grant, and $50,000, and we need to raise another $15,000 to unlock that grant. So that's we're working towards whittling that down, but that's one of our short-term targets. And there'll be fundraising needs even after we're open. You know, we'd like to have a fully equipped kitchen. There'll be AV equipment needs. There'll be ongoing needs for equipment, especially, and furniture. That.
If somebody wants to help whittle that $15,000 down, what's the best way they can do that?
The best way would be to contact the Juneau Community Foundation directly, and Amy or her staff can help you make your contribution. Or you can actually go to our website, gustavuscommunitycenter.org, and we can accept your donation there too.
Besides potluck and music, what's another event you look forward to joining at the new center?
We have our next big event is July 19th, when Sandor Katz, who's a fermentation guru, is coming to Gustavus to put on a workshop. But that would be before the building is built. Once the building is built, I think we're going to have a massive ribbon cutting ceremony. But we'll be able to do things like Winterfest and things like that indoors instead of huddling under a tent like we're doing now.
Well, it's been so great having you on the show. Susan Brooks, she is on the board of directors of the Gustavus Community Center. They still have $15,000 to raise. You can help them out by going to the Juneau Community Foundation website or going to the Gustavus Community Center itself.
Right.
There on the web. And you break ground later this year, 2018, 200 feet, you said, just down the road.
Well,
here.
200 yards.
200
yards.
Yeah.
Great, beautiful view of Icy Strait, and we just welcome everyone from Juneau to come out.
Susan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
The scenery is changing and I haven't moved a step. I sat down at dusk where I said is where I slept. The moon said at 1 o'clock the sky was starfield. For another from the lost village back in the hills. With a breeze for a blanket, slick rock for my bed. Young smiles from young women, starlight in my head. There's no settling down, there's no keeping still. But when you've been dreaming of a lost village back in the hills, I cover ground at dawn and dusk and sleep through the midday heat with every generation that came before us. I know what it's like to use my feet. I know what it's like to use my feet. And tomorrow I'll move onward, call it progress, I guess. Onward and forward to a bigger, greater mess, to the smaller, lesser something of kill or be killed, to collect what's left of the lost village back in the hills. And maybe I'll meet you on the road somewhere. I too ride the highways with a hypocrite stare. Oh, I'd meet you in the desert if it was up to free will, and reminisce of the lost village back in the hills. I cover ground at dawn and dusk, and sleep through the midday heat. With every generation that came before us, I will know what it's like to use my feet. I'll know what it's like to use my feet. Oh, the scenery is changing and I haven't moved a step. I sat down at dusk, where I sat is where I slept. The moon said at 1 o'clock the sky was star-filled. Oh, another from the lost village back in the hills.
Support comes from Amy's Guest House, located in Gustavus and featuring 3 self-catering apartments, all surrounded by wildflower meadows and close to cafes, galleries, and groceries at the Four Corners. Bicycles available. Information at glacierbayalaska.net.
And that song we just heard is Back in the Hills by Patrick Hare. Actually, Back in the Hills, 6-month stints. Songwriter who lived seasonally in Gustavus for several years, and that's from his album, Snagged Up a Tree. Thanks again to Justin Smith of Rusty Recordings for providing that music. My next guest is Lou Cassiopo. He is the owner of The Outpost, where we will be having an open mic and community potluck tomorrow night, Friday. He's also a carver and has a gallery there at The Outpost. Lou, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott.
Did I get your name right?
You did. It was perfect. Better than I do. It was good. You did good.
Lou, when did you make it to Gustavus?
99, I came and cleared property and put a foundation in. Came back in 2000, built a house, and moved from Juneau.
Okay, and you're a carver, and you bought The Outpost around the same time?
Didn't buy it.
Okay.
I build everything I have. I've built my last 3 homes, including one beautiful one in Juneau.
Okay, so you're a builder.
Well, it's art. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the interesting things to me is how you not only wanted a space for artwork, but you also are a music lover.
Yeah, very selfish. I started playing the guitar like about 10 years ago, learning how to play, and at the Bear's Nest used to have open mics, and I that's where I got kind of tuned in and turned on. And they left, and there was no venue for that, which had really a good sound in the room, good acoustics. So I built The Outpost. I needed a gallery, another one. It's my second gallery here. And it's provided a wonderful catalyst for improving, talent, and you've got a little stage in there. So at first it was intimidating, but everybody loves it now.
Well, we look forward to hanging out there on Friday night. I want to get back to the music in a second. Tell us about your carving. Tell us about your art.
This is going to be like a 4-hour interview? Okay, about my art. Well, I came to Alaska in 1974 as an artist and an airplane mechanic. I've always done art, either mainstream or filtered. And I started carving with regular carving tools. I wasn't much of a wood carver. I've done stone. Paintings and pen and inks was my primary media. I came here, and some of the native carvers, one in particular, Jack Hudson, a Tsimshian from Metlakatla, noticed my work and approached me and introduced himself and started talking about art, and loved my work. And from there, he invited me to Metlakatla to make real tools, hook knives, curved knives, bent knives, and straight gouges, and all kinds of tools. And he has definitely turned me on to wood carving personified, because the tools I was using were like archaic, store-bought things compared to what we could make and the quality of it, and adzes. And I started working profusely using red alder, sometimes red and yellow, and I've carved probably 70 masks, probably 50 which are sold, and 20, that I keep adding to that. Well, I do other artwork too. I do stone carving, sculpturing. So that's where I'm at with the wood, and I use it to make a platform for a message. A lot of it is political, some of it is spiritual. As I've matured, I've calmed down on the in-your-face political stuff, and mostly spiritual and thought-provoking work is what I'm doing. Once in a while, very seldom, incorporate totemic art into my work to make a statement using that art. I don't do any native carving because they do such a wonderful job. Why would I even think about it?
Tell us about your music.
My music in particular? Okay,
Yeah.
my music in particular is another area of, I feel as an artist and as a musician and songwriter that it's an obligation to me and to artists, I feel, to invoke emotion. And when things are going on in the world, in particular, I don't want to get too political, but like with our own things that are going on in our government right now, I'm compelled to write songs that relate to how I feel about it. And they're not all based that way. Some are storied. It could be contemporary folk, if there is such a thing. I don't know how to describe my music, really. It's they're not ballads for sure. And they just mostly have a message. I don't do la-la songs.
I think I found some of your songs on the Outpost Facebook site. Are there some videos there?
There are a few. Yeah, okay. I have like over 100 songs, so there's probably might be 2 or 3. I don't really.
And is that a good place to see images of your art as well? Where can our listeners go?
To my website, which is Camalou. Can I do this?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I'll toot my horn. Camalou, like Camelot, only it's Camalou. Studio at, studio.com. I have 2 emails. So anyway, again, it's CamalouStudio.com.
Okay.
Yeah, I have another email.
So you've graciously agreed to host an open mic and potluck at the Outpost tomorrow night here in Gustavus.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
very selfish. I don't do anything I don't like, and I like having a good time. So
So I have not been to an open mic and potluck in Gustavus yet. What's that going to look like?
It's going to be a little crowded with the potluck going on at the same time. During winter, we have a steady 30 to 35 people that come. I try to do it 2 times a month on Saturdays. Tomorrow night we can expect, I'm guessing, 50 to 60 people, and if the weather's nice, we'll spill out into the yard, which is I try to keep landscaped and pretty. And the talent is always surprising, because in the summer particularly we have people come up that work at different lodges and B&Bs, and a lot of them, I would say 5% of them are musicians and singers, and I'm always blown away by the talent that comes up, and I always think to myself, how come these people aren't doing music for a living? But I know why.
Are you going to play us a tune tomorrow night?
I'll break my arm. Yeah, the schedule might be, you can tell I'm from Brooklyn, New York. Yeah, break my arm. So I'm going to try something new. We'll see how many musicians sign up. And if there's an abundance of talent, we might have to do one song so that everybody has a chance to play for you guys. Other than that, the standard is 15 minutes, or the same as Folk Fest, or 3, set of 3 till the hook comes out.
So for you Gustavus listeners, this is tomorrow night, Friday at 6 p.m. at the Outpost. For you Juneau listeners, it's not too late to come on over to Gustavus to join us tomorrow night, Friday at the Outpost. How do we get to the Outpost from here, Lou?
You go down the main road and you cross the Salmon River Bridge. And the first right you can make is Dolly Varden. Just follow the fish. You get on Dolly Varden. You go straight until you get to Humpy. Make a left on Humpy. And on the right-hand side, you'll see cars in park down towards the end, just before you get to the turnaround. So it's easy to find, and there's signs up.
That's Lou Cassiopo. He is the owner of the Outpost, musician and artist. Will be at the Outpost tomorrow night, Friday, as part of a Gustavus potluck community night and open mic. Lou, it's been great having you on the show. Is there anything else our listeners should know?
Just that I love living in Gustavus. It's a spiritual health remedy for anybody that needs their spirits picked up, and it's cozy. Everybody waves, like you said, and everybody's got their own wave. So thank you for this interview, and we're looking to have a great time tomorrow night.
Thanks, Lou. We'll see you tomorrow night.
Pleasure.
You're listening to The Long Unquiet Sea by Justin Smith as we take a Gustavus afternoon out here on Thursday. It's been great being here at the Fireweed. We've had a lot of fun. I want to thank Melanie Lesh for taking us all around Gustavus and organizing all of this. She's also on the KTOO Board of Directors. Hope everyone can come out to the community potluck at the Outpost Friday night, 6 p.m. Bring some food and your musical instruments, everyone. Tomorrow, Friday, we're going to be out at the park, Bartlett Cove, and we're going to be checking out the intersection of culture, science, management, research, and tourism in the national park and preserve that is enormous. So I hope you all can make it or tune in to a Gustavus afternoon on Friday. And as for the weather tomorrow here in Gustavus, mostly cloudy, highs around 60 and light winds.